Hey, everybody, we're back with another insider interview, and my buddy Bill Chu.
Hey there. Happy to see you,
Fresh
world.
off of some vacation. Bill serves as the missionary to MSU, Michigan State University.
That's right. Go green.
Yeah,
Go
go
white.
white.
Yeah, right.
I was adopted into an MSU household.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I was
Right.
always a U of M guy, and then Anna went to med school. So
I got my Sparty on there.
nice.
That's the
Um,
Brutus of the Spartans.
we were offline. We were just talking about all sorts of cool artistic things that students do, and it's great to be working. I volunteer with the Motor City Wesley, and got some musicians down there, and Bill's got some filmmakers.
I got filmmakers, other creatives. They're interested in actually legislation work, and just getting to meet people. Artists of all types, so musicians
That's
and
awesome.
one person is right now has been doing a lot of just sort of authoring bell arrangements. So
Yeah, that's so great. Well, thanks for sitting down. Today we're going to be looking at a collection of these lyrics from Lent that I worked on, and tentatively titled Eusebia, which I think is a Greek word. Yeah.
yeah, I love the title. Like, we should start there and drill down on that. I think, is that all right if we just
Yeah, that's
hit
great.
it? I mean, because before you get too far from the title, yes,
Sure.
it's a Greek word. It means like sacred awe is how I'm translating it.
Mm.
Um, but it also means the way that God should be revered. So
Mm.
CBS is revering, and you is like offering praise. Um, yeah. So the way God should be praised is how I'm
Nice.
reading it. The
I
other
love it.
thing that captured my imagination from the title immediately, I'm like, oh, this is great. He's giving me this one because it's about Eusebius of Caesarea, from you know uh, second century and second to third centuries, and I'm like, oh yeah, that'll be great. We can talk about that. I don't know if that's what you had in mind as I started reading the lyric, but maybe it
No,
was.
I didn't know there was a person. Who was the person?
So Eusebius was one of our church fathers,
Okay.
and his title is Eusebius of Caesarea. He was active in like 300 years. Yeah, in the third century, I guess that is, and he had something to do with the Council of Nicaea.
Okay.
And he inherited Origen's library, so he was like influenced heavily by Origen. We all love Origen because he's the one who smashed his own nuts because he was anyway. I might have just waylaid us there. I don't know. We
Oh,
can fix it in
definitely Google
post.
that, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Eusebius. Anyway, he helped with formulation of the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed and such. So
Yeah.
uh, at first I thought it was sort of an ode to Eusebius, but then as I drilled down on the Greek, I thought, oh yeah, I really like that. And then I thought I tried to look it up on iTunes already because I thought maybe you were further along on the song.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a cool band named Eusebius, so I'm gonna have to like download that and
Oh,
listen to
nice.
it.
Yeah, I'll check them out.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
who knows?
interesting.
They
What does it
might be
mean to have
some.
the name or the band name of like piety, godliness, praise? Well, how did you translate it?
Yeah, sacred awe is how I was translating it.
Sacred awe person. That's his
Yeah,
name.
yeah. So I mean, the one or to give God praise, God is
Yeah.
worthy of our praise, or something like that. Sacred awe.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
if that was your name, or if you devoted you called your band that. Right now, our Wesley band is I call them Sanctify, just because I think, well, it's a name that's out there, it's a word that's out there in the culture. People have heard it, maybe they don't know exactly what it means, but it's really Wesleyan. Or
Right.
Wesley had a unique view of sanctification, and so it looks good on a poster, that sort of thing. But what does it mean to it's to be made holy, to be set apart, to be perfected in some way, sanctify, that is. And so what does it mean to devote a group of people to continue to perfect their music, to perfect their walk in Christ? So what does it mean to have a band or devote a child
Mhm.
to be the one who's going to be awestruck by God, by the miracles of God, to give God proper reverence in their whole lives. So that's when I came at the song, I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's what he's up to. He's like, what does it mean to give God proper reverence? Um, the other thing is that Eusebius wrote this book called Church History, and he sort of evaluated up for the first 300 years the life of the Christian church. And I thought, when we're talking about the nest piles above our books to dos, I thought, oh, that's like, oh, you mean to read the book? You know, it's like one of those books that I've always wanted to read, but I've never read. You know, and it's
That's right.
a stack.
That
And I
physical
thought,
to-do list, right there on your
right,
bookshelf, right?
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so, but and then it keeps getting higher and higher and requires its own Sherpas and stuff. Thinking about that, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but yeah, but his book, it's something that you want. The past is important, history is important. If we're not aware of history, we might repeat it. But then it's so beautiful. That's the great news about the gospel, is that it's actually meant to be repeated in a sense, every day in our lives. It's meant to
Yeah.
take a what do they call that when it's like a fractal, that there's a big picture and it's made up of a bunch of little pictures and they're all the same exact picture as the big picture, and it
Yeah.
just keeps getting bigger. Maybe it's not the same exact picture, but they're very, very similar to each other. And then they all together they form this big picture. And I think that's,
Repeating and patterns and yeah.
yeah, the
Mhm.
gospel is, if nothing else, it's a fractal. It's a fractal of, um, I once was lost and now I'm found. It's a redemption. It's a fractal story of redemption. And I see that we care for all of the fractal stories that came before. We look forward to the fractal stories that are unfolding in the future. We know that we're a part of them in some way. We know that we don't own them in any way. I mean, they all belong to God. And whether we get around to reading them or not, they are meaningful to us. It's something that we do cherish.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, that's what. So that, I mean, just in the title, my mind was captivated by JD.
Well, I love it, and that's probably where I ended up after writing the lyrics as I did. Um, the thinking about the lines as I finished them kind of led me back into that direction. You know,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Of sacred reverence, or
Yeah, sacred reverence and that kind of repetitive
yeah.
spending time. Um, I'll just go ahead and say, the real beginnings to these lyrics just happened to be that just doing book time in the evening with my 3-year-old.
Yeah.
We got I forget if we bought it or if somebody gave it to us, but it's a collection of these early chapter books, and they're a little bit like I forget the name of them, but they're a little bit like a Hardy Boys mysteries, in that they all basically have the same first chapter.
Okay.
It's this brother and sister, and they go to their tree fort, and then their tree fort opens up into another world, and each book is a different world, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
But JD, my 3-year-old, only wanted to read the first chapter of each of those books. So we
Oh.
went through 4 or 5 of these books, reading basically the same 5-6 pages of these kids, and it never got to the actual content of the book because he was on to the next one. And it was
Yeah, I
just
wonder
really,
about that. So that's interesting. It's like reading a whole mess of creation stories and spending a lot of time in creation stories.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
and why? Yeah, that's striking to me that JD had that uh, embryology in a sense. It's a literary embryology. So so what you didn't say is that I'm a scientist by training. I have
Yeah.
almost have my PhD from Michigan State in cancer biology, and I used to teach embryology. And one of the things we often say is like all of evolution can be seen in the development of an embryo. And so it looks like a fish. When the cells come together, it looks like the earliest thing. It looks like a fish, and it kind of grows into slow over time, over multiple cell divisions. It starts to grow into something that's more advanced, and but it still all begins at the beginning, and everybody has to. And the way JD, there is sort of an embryology going on, a literary form of embryology. JD wants to read all the beginnings, just to get his head around what does it mean to have a start. I suppose we need to do that. You always start at the beginning, whether you're learning to run or walk or ski or play guitar. You just repeat. You don't always jump into the finger picking or just keep on working at forming that C chord. It's going to be okay at the end.
It reminded me too of just kind of reveling in a childish pursuit, either of the world or of the story or whatever. That it was pretty refreshing. We tend to like having a pile of books and seeing that as a never fulfilled to-do list is a very adult thing to think, right? Those are things that I need to finish. But JD looks at that pile of books and says that each of those is a beginning of a new adventure.
Right. I know that you don't have, that you can love and not finish.
Yeah.
Like, it is okay to just pick it up and just read. Yeah. How OCD is that? I mean, one of the, reading on Kindle, one of the things that stresses me out about reading on the Kindles, I don't know exactly where I'm at the book. I know that there is a feature about that I can figure out where I'm at the book, but I always like to know, in the codex, just holding it, I'm almost done with this, I'm almost, but then the Kindle is more like what JD would like to read. I can pick this up, I'm going to read this book, and here it is. And then if I get tired of this book, I can switch to the next book. It's no problem. And it's okay. I don't have to be OCD about getting to the last page.
Yeah.
What is it?
Not
what does it
having
mean,
the
though?
physical cues of where you are toward the last page.
Yeah. In all those books, I mean, and any time spent with the author is a gift. Whether you spend the entire time with the author as author intended, or I was able to spend the beginning with the author, or this much time with the author, that's all. It's a gift, and frankly, even after, I don't know, maybe I'm a postmodern, that I'm not worried about beginning, middles, and ends so much as just a chance to hear other people's different stories and keep going. I mean, and I think I find that interesting in that, how many different ways could it end? Or how many different ways could it begin? They're all fractal anyway.
Yeah,
so if you're familiar with a kind of core story that is redemptive story of gospel, even if any story you pick up begins to take on that gospel arc.
Yeah.
Or you get really frustrated if it doesn't. I mean,
right.
Or even when it's at the end, you go, well, that was a good book, but then you're still gonna critique it based on the fractal story that you live on. What is your personal redemptive story? Easter Day, I was in Colorado, and I went to Beaver Creek, and they have a sunrise service on the top of Beaver Creek, and they had this great pastor. He's a Baptist pastor, and he was doing the message and everything. My dad, we got done. He had a great message, and he invited us to consider the characters of the resurrection story, and all the regular characters are there. The women are there. John and Peter are there, and the resurrection story the character that you probably have never considered is the cross. And so I'm like, oh, cool. He's going to anthropomorphize the cross. This is very interesting. and he's like, up till now, the cross is completely dominated. The name of his sermon was Complete Domination. Up till now, the cross is completely dominated. Everybody, that has ever gone against the cross, is completely dominated. But then the cross's domination is fails, because of Jesus. He can't dominate Jesus. And so at the end, when we're heading back down on the lift, that was what I was left with. And I thought, oh, this is so great. I mean, and my dad was saying, oh, I kind of thought it was 3 different sermons all kind of put together. I'm like, yeah, Easter is really hard to put a sermon together. You're like stressed out about what's got to make a big difference, big impact. And the point is, it's just one story. It's the same story every year, but it's okay. You can just tell that same story. It's no big deal, and it's going to make all the deal. Just keep it simple, like it's going to make all the deal to the people who are hearing it. And you don't have to make it unique necessarily. And that might have been, he got stuck there. But I said, the thing that I really appreciated was that notion about what does it mean that the cross is the one who had complete domination without God, without Christ, until Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and there's 6 other people in the gondola, as we're going down. And now they're kind of cued in. And, I'm like, there are places in my life where I'm so proud of the way I can do things. And I go, oh, yeah, like this has nothing to do with God. This is like my thing, and I dominated this, and this is so awesome. And I take pride in that. And like, what does it mean to have all that taken away? And then what would it mean for me to let Christ into that? And how much better could that domination be if I allowed Christ to be the one who dominated? If I gave sacred awe to the one who loves me, if I treated that with Eusebius, and give it over. And now people are like really listening. And I thought, and there are those moments in my life where I feel I have just been completely and utterly dominated. There's nothing that I can do in God, and I'm holding it. And then by the same token, I still hold those things back from God because, I for whatever reason, I think God couldn't do anything about this, or God doesn't want this. This is the worst part. But that is the way that I could get to achieve complete domination, is allow God into that space too. And, now the places where I have felt completely dominated can be used to, give God glory in a way that makes all the difference if I just let God in. And I said, the thing that I feel is most compelling is this story, even though that cross was unable to dominate Christ brings the cross along so that now we look at crosses when they're hanging on our necks, or they're, at the church, or, in a flame even, or whatever. But now we look at it as a symbol, not of death, but of life and of a new beginning. And that's like the best domination. God completely dominated in Christ on the cross, just changed everything around. And so, that it was able to soak it up. So all that is to say, the pastor never got there in the story. but on the way down, that's where he brought me to, in that space. And that's why you don't have to read every chapter. That's why it's okay to engage a book or engage somebody's story with just the time that you can give to it. And actually, it's so funny. The door might ring here. Can you pause things? Because it looks like somebody. I got a church.
We're good.
Saints guy coming to my door.
Oh, you bring him in.
yeah. Hang on just a sec.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Cool.
Sorry about that. I always like the hanging out with those ones.
The Anna's great regret is that one day 2 Mormon guys walked by and said, "Hey, anything we can help you with?" while she was painting the fence, and she sent them away.
Yeah,
now she's like, I should have had her paint the fence with me.
Yes, they will do that. That's like their thing. That's what they do. Yeah,
man. All right, I forget where we were. We could pick up elsewhere,
actually,
or if you
know
remember.
what? Now I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna contact those guys. I got somebody who needs help. I'm gonna have them help her move.
Oh, nice! I love it.
Okay, where we were, I was distracted. I was like really impressed by JD's notion of this sort of embryological development.
It's so fun, and it's he's on to the next adventure, and there's a certain childishness to that is also, if you get totally stuck there and you miss any of the depth of the story, of the narrative, that's probably not where we should be either, but we just shouldn't abandon one for the other, probably. Maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there is a story that you do want to get at some content. I think that's true. I mean, you do want to have a sense of, this is the story, this is the arc. I mean, and again, I think for me, I think the gospel story is the core of that. No matter what beginning you're going to start, here's how I've gotten it wrong. Here's how I've encountered Christ. Here's how I've turned my life around, and it might not be exactly the way I imagined, but it's all great in the end. Like it's and so if that's the main story, that's the main narrative that you want your child to live into, that your child cherishes, and anytime they encounter a story in its completeness that doesn't follow that, that then it's saying, well, then for me, that's when the critique gets to happen. You can say, yeah, that story's true, that story's good, that story's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But or not, because it didn't match up with my family story. It didn't match up with the sacred story that we've been carrying along, and that's okay. I mean, it doesn't mean that other stories aren't legit or can't be read. I mean, in fact, they ought to, because they become conversation partners with our core story or our family story. So yes, I agree. What if you just stay on the beginnings, or even if you just stay on the ends? I mean, there are people who just read, the first page and the last page of a book, and they don't spend any time in the middle.
Right.
So let me ask you this: are you one who do spoilers bother you?
Oh, well, I guess I have to say yes because I don't even like previews that are too, too open about what's going to happen in the movie.
Okay.
It's just a matter of because I want it to unfold. I want it to be, I want to
So you need it
experience
to
it.
be kind of like a surprise in a sense, or this unknown that's you're encountering.
I would say that's my preference, certainly. Yeah.
See, well, tell me this: do you mind? Does it bother you to see a play that you've seen before, or a musical that you've seen before?
Well, that's a good question. Um, Musicals, no, because they're enjoyable all the way along. It doesn't matter what the plot is necessarily. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
we just went to see Hamilton. I knew what
Okay.
the
Yeah.
ending of that story was going to be the whole time.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's something to see the performers, interpret it and go along, and So okay. So you're one who it bothers you to see a spoiler or to see a preview that reveals too much. For me, I love that stuff. I mean, and it doesn't. If you tell me how the thing ended, it doesn't mean I'm not going to see the movie or I'm not going to read the book,
Yeah.
because I I guess I'm going to make the same I'm going to reference the same points that you just made, that you like to see it unfold, but from the other perspective. I mean, I don't care that I know what happens. I like to see it unfold.
Just open it up again like a pop-up
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. And I would read the book again. I would read the story again because it might mean something different this time. I would even read it with somebody else. Like I will even relive the book that I read with another reader, and we'll visit over coffee, and they'll talk about a chapter, and I'm like, I did not get that. I didn't even
I
see that.
forgot about it. No,
But
and I don't think I have ever reread a fictional book more than once.
okay. Okay.
It doesn't interest me, but what I've learned over the past few years of being more intentional about spending time in the Bible, particularly parts that you haven't really ever read because you thought didn't need to or something, but
Yeah.
also parts that I have, and doing Lectio Divina stuff, the repetition of experiencing the story that I already know the ending of, it really does open it up more and more every time. So I don't know why I do that with scripture, but not other things.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, maybe it's just that you are. Okay, so I have like a little adult, attention deficit. So maybe that's it. I just need a bit of it, and that's enough, and then I can move on to the next thing. And you
Right.
don't want to, you don't want to habitualize students or your young people to those habits of attention deficit. So it's important to have them be able to read every first chapter and all the chapters. But but I think there's room though to honor just that window that they're going to give it. Plus,
Yeah.
and early on, there's only a window of time that you have of attention that you have. So what can I give? What can I get? How can I get the most out of the window of attention that I have in this moment? I mean, I suppose that's the way we live. I mean, that everybody. I got this in the song. I mean, we are a story that all beginnings or new starts offer through the waves. I mean, we are all that story. I think. I mean, I read that. So that's in the third stanza there. We are a story that's all beginnings. There's a couple things happening in that line for me. One, we become people of the book. So our stories are, I mean, that's how each of us is a living gospel. And so, we are a story. And so in just focusing in on that and how we are a story that's lived out in the world, we only get the chance to see a little bit of it at any given time. I mean, today you're intersecting with my story and you're going to see this, but you're not going to see my complete day.
Right.
You don't get to know how it ends, but you can still enjoy that fractal moment. So there's that, and then that's all, and then apart it's all beginnings. I mean, yeah, we all have or at least a new start, a new chance. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new chance to encounter what God's calling you to today.
There must be something that we've picked up from our synoptic heritage.
Yeah,
That the
yeah,
core
yeah,
of our story starts over 3 or 4 times.
yeah. There's a repetitive nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what does it mean to have, John telling a different way?
Right. It's like boom, 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 like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And there's another. This also happened.
I'm gonna restart the story and kind of go all the way back to the beginning again.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. A beginning, a new beginning. But
Yeah.
it's yeah. Maybe John is the best fractal for you say. Here's what's happening. John was a postmodern, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I picked up along the way in this passage. I did get to the penultimate verse there, which heavily influenced by a anti-racism training event with Forum for Theological Exploration.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, there's some stuff that I missed there, and stuff going on. Are you talking about the "We identify with James, not Rudyard"?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I know about Locke. I assume James was the Book of James, but I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about.
It's actually James Baldwin.
Baldwin. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. There was a presentation that kind of compared and contrasted some of these Rudyard Kipling and
yeah.
Locke in their description of African uh,
Okay,
residents of these countries in Africa where they went to visit, or I don't know, but that the reason I kept it in, I mean, in some ways it's this weird out of the blue verse, but in other ways they took childishness and ascribed it to these African persons.
yeah.
And the whole rest of this thing is like the way that childishness can free us. But they were using it as this weird critique. And so it's kind of a critique of their critique.
Yeah. Like, so Jesus says, in order to enter my kingdom, you have to be like a child.
Right.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
To compare to what they're up to here. Like, I mean, I think that's unfair because it's unfair to someone from Africa, because there's a whole, I mean, they're not, that's romanticizing them a bit. I mean, they're not all children, and they have children, and they have adults, and they have, like there's a spectrum of the African experience.
That's a good point. And be careful about how you say things. I think that what I was trying to pull out was kind of exactly that, which is the typical, or this kind of colonialist tendency to talk about savagery, childishness,
Yeah.
and to use that as a power tool,
Right.
A tool of power against folks.
So what does it mean? What would it mean to try to lay that down, lay those words down, or just acknowledge that they exist and they only exist, they're only useful insofar as they are useful, and we need to understand how they abuse people, and that's what you're trying to do.
And that's really just what James Baldwin was doing, by lifting them up, pointing it out. The kind of the rife accusations part is let's make sure we call that out when we see it.
I think it should be left in. Then I think that's that's important, because we're saying, I mean, overall, you're trying to say, how do we afford everybody's story with appropriate sacred awe?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and instead of just saying, "Oh, that's childlike," or that, for either way, I mean, whether we're saying we're like Paul, we're saying we're putting away childish things, or whether we're saying we're like Jesus, we need to be more childlike, whatever. Instead of using it as an accusation, just try to encounter it as, okay, how do I assign appropriate awe that will give God glory, sacred awe? How do I assign sacred awe to this moment that I'm encountering this person, I'm encountering their story? How do we assign that?
because in some ways the descriptions that Kipling and Locke offer of other persons in such a derogatory way are like the antithesis of sacred awe in
Right,
some ways.
right. They're categorizing folks and saying that they couldn't
Mhm.
possibly um, be able to approach the throne of God like we can because we are so enlightened. And
Yeah.
it's so striking to me how uh, the how uh, so-called progressive and diverse communities. Okay,
Mhm.
like I'm thinking reconciling communities typically. Um, wave the enlightenment card. Well, you just have to teach them, these people who are coming in who are struggling with gay marriage or different views of God. You just need to, all that's necessary is for you to train them up so that they're as smart as us, and then they'll be okay. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I mean, what's necessary is for us to spend time together and give them some footing and purchase and help them into this community of trust so that then they feel like they have some standing and they can say, oh, it's okay for me to say a stupid thing because this is it's going to be all right if I apologize, and there's a vehicle for confession, pardon, and reconciliation, and
Oh yeah.
that's
Right.
the point. So
Yep.
I mean, and versus I'm never, I don't know if I can land here, one, because I don't know if I belong here because I'm not smart enough, or two, I don't know, I don't really feel comfortable just saying, being myself, because I'm worried someone's going to jump on me and call me a child or whatever, or
Yeah.
call me an idiot,
Right.
I don't want to say the wrong thing. But you gotta say stuff in order to grow. In a sense, you have to have to try. So it's striking to me how quickly even progressives will, go into this rife accusation and name calling, and I mean, I guess I knew that. I mean, back at Garrett we had this. I used to call it well, what was it? It was like the intolerance of tolerance, I think. Remember, I used to come up with. I mean, that's true. There is an intolerance of tolerance, and I think the great news is, the church is always that place that welcomes the eunuch, Ethiopian eunuch, who has gender confusion or like there's some kind of something different about that person. The church is always that place that welcomes somebody different
Yeah.
and challenges us to say, what does it mean to welcome somebody different, and how do we know more about ourselves, know more about Jesus, know more about God, the other, in that diverse community. And man, right now though, like Martin Luther King says, that it's that Sunday morning is the most segregated hour. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
and we do it on purpose. We only kind of want to be by people that are like us, and so then we don't ascribe appropriate sacred awe to the differences. Um,
Which is
I tell
probably
you,
so. And our church is facing some various propositions of fracture,
mm-hmm.
which would basically allow people to kind of not have to deal with each other anymore
Yeah,
in some ways. And each of them, each side will say, well, that's an essential part of how I need to live as a member of the church, is to not be with that other person. Um, I'm not there yet. I feel like the last verse is all about this other kids book that I read with JD that is
yeah.
all about
Marcel Moose.
these weird animals getting together and wandering around and finding the answer together because they've spent time together,
Hmm.
not because they had the answer already. And I just would be so sad, so sad to just kind of jettison folks from my life just because I didn't agree with them. And that's, with the confession that I do that all the time by not emailing or, not by unfriending people on Facebook that I would just rather not be bothered with, I mean, that happens, but there's something stronger, I think, in, well, this is a song about learning from JD. So last night we were at the playground and there's a boy that JD was playing with. They'd never met. He didn't know his name. And over the course of 30 or 40 minutes of them playing, JD came over to us about 3 or 4 times and said, "He's not my friend anymore,"
Oh,
because some sort of, they,
dust up.
yeah. And then literally not 15 seconds later, he would run over and they would play for another 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
just beginning after beginning after beginning, and not holding too precious to whatever slight happened,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to learn from.
Yeah. I mean, there's room for accountability, mutual accountability.
Yeah.
And holding and doing better, trying to name things that others have done wrong to us, and then holding them accountable for new behaviors. There's room for that. And it's important work. I mean, so, there's that famous verse, and I'm not remembering where it is, but wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be with them always.
Yeah.
It's right around Matthew, like 17th chapter or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm pretty close. I might have to look that one up. But what's striking to me is that is not about, low church attendance wherever 2 or 3 are gathered.
Right.
When it's always used that way, like, well, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered,
Hey.
like, that has nothing to do with low church attendance. I mean, what it has to do with, it's in the context, and when we encounter where Jesus is saying that, we're encountering it in this moment where we're talking about divisions in the church. What happens when a brother sins against you? And so it either comes at the end of that, there's the spot where, well, how many times do we have to forgive? I tell you, and then when a brother sins against you, you go take it to them, and if that doesn't work, you take someone along with you, and if that doesn't work, you take it to the elders, and if that doesn't work, you treat them like an outsider, which is really the object of the gospel. Like the Latter-day Saints come knocking on the door, I'm an outsider.
It's to go meet the outsiders.
Exactly. You go to them. And, it's not a matter of shunning, but then you treat them like an outsider. You become an object of the gospel, and you continue to read it to them. And then he says, so wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, mm-hmm. I'm with you. Basically, it means, as soon as you have more than one person reading the scripture or contemplating God or trying to give sacred awe, you're going to have 2 different ways of approaching that. You're going to have diversity. As soon as then you had 3, you're going to have like that, another level of diversity. And it's in that diversity that you're going to encounter Christ.
Yeah.
It's not in the monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're approaching this move to what happens in a new church, or in a time where we're going to jettison part of the church, yeah, that's what's at stake for me. Because wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, I'm with you also. And it's not, but then if you don't allow 2 or 3 to gather, what happens? Jesus is done with the church. Jesus has left the church.
And on that note, Bill, thanks so much for talking with me about this. And I know that it was just a jumping off point for a number of different conversations really that we had, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I just want to ask you, were you thinking about Don Quixote in the Keep the Birds Safe and Sidekicks Dropped by Other Knights? So is that reference to?
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of that kind of Sancho Panza. Is that his name?
Hey, did I lose you? Someone was calling me. I'm going to invite you about your Cervantes there and Sancho, Don Quixote's sidekick.
Yeah, I definitely the misadventure, the misfit hero. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote on the notes here. Yeah, it's very quixotic.
I appreciate that, and in light of my son's new fixation on all the traditional superheroes, he is Iron Man now.
Okay.
Whenever we're playing, I want to keep upholding all these kind of less than Hollywood heroes stories that we can find. That's all.
Well, actually, yeah, Tony Stark is a less
than
perfect hero.
Yeah, that's a good point. I need to get him into the history comic books, not just the movies.
Yeah. Right, right.
Hey, Bill, where can people find you and the work that you're doing and get in touch with you if they want to pick your brain anymore? You online anywhere where
Yeah,
would you
I'm
set
on
people?
Chew Willie on all the things. So CHUWILLI on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and then I serve MSU Wesley.org. So if you can find our stuff at MSUWesley.org. So thanks.
And if you want to support the MSU community right now, but don't feel like donating to the school, you can always donate to the Wesley.
Yeah, one of our core competencies is raising excellent leaders, and so there's a strong vacuum of leadership at MSU right now. So we're doing that. We're filling that vacuum. So come and join us. It's msuwesley.org/donations.
Oh man, and prayers for the whole community up there. I know it's a tough time,
Thank
but thanks for doing this. And we're looking for all the cool, fun new beginnings that our young people lead us into. Thanks.
Praise God. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill. I'll use that as an edit point.
Okay, thanks.
We'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
Okay, bye.